call them trash pandas, cute little bandits with clever hands and mischievous eyes. But there's nothing cute about a raccoon when it's defending territory and standing in its way, a creature most animals won't even look at twice. A skunk, armed with the most feared chemical weapon in North America. When these two cross paths on a dark suburban night, when food is scarce and territory is everything, biology decides what happens next, not folklore, not the cute videos you see online. Biology. One of them is an aggressive opportunist, built for combat, with surprising strength and zero fear. The other is a walking deterrent, a creature that made other predators evolve entire behavioral patterns just to avoid it. So, who wins when avoidance is no longer an option? When a raccoon's hunger meets a skunk's line in the sand? The answer is more complex than you think. And what it reveals about evolutionary strategy, about different kinds of power, changes everything you thought you knew about backyard wildlife. Let's imagine something that happens more often than you'd think. A dumpster behind a restaurant, suburban Ohio, 2 a.m. The raccoon arrived first. It's been feeding here for months, has established this location as part of its territory, knows exactly which latch to manipulate, which angle gets the lid open fastest. Those eerily human-like hands work the metal. But before the lid opens, movement in the periphery. 30 feet away, black and white stripes emerge from the tree line. A skunk, also hungry, also aware this dumpster has been producing food. Here's where it gets interesting. Both animals are well adapted to suburban life. Both are survivors. Both have carved out ecological niches that humans inadvertently created. The question isn't whether these encounters happen. They do, thousands of times across North America every night. The question is, when two animals built by completely different evolutionary pressures meet over the same resource, what determines the outcome? Is it size, aggression, weaponry, experience? To answer that, we need to understand what each of these animals actually is. Not the cartoons, not the reputation, the biology. Because a raccoon isn't just some clever scavenger with a bandit mask. And a skunk isn't just a docile creature that sprays when scared. Both of these animals are the product of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Both are survivors in environments that killed off less adaptable species. And both, when pushed, are far more dangerous than most people realize. So let's start with the animal everyone underestimates. The one that shows up in garbage cans and funny videos. The raccoon, the North American raccoon, Procyon lauter, is one of the most successful medium-sized mammals on the continent. An adult male weighs between 15 and 28 pounds. Body length reaches 24 to 38 inches, including the tail. Females are slightly smaller, typically 12 to 20 pounds. For context, that's roughly the size of a Cocker Spaniel, but built like a badger, compact, muscular, low center of gravity. But the numbers don't tell the real story. The raccoon's success comes from a combination of traits that make it extraordinarily adaptable. Starting with those hands. Raccoon paws are unlike almost any other mammal. 5 fingers on each hand, each capable of independent movement. No opposable thumbs. But that hardly matters when you have that much dexterity. They can open latches, turn doorknobs, unscrew jar lids, manipulate objects with precision that borders on unsettling. In laboratory tests, raccoons have demonstrated problem-solving abilities comparable to monkeys. They remember solutions to complex puzzles for up to 3 years. Watch a raccoon work a secured trash can, And you're watching an animal that evolved to exploit every possible food source. The intelligence isn't just in the hands. The brain-to-body ratio in raccoons is comparable to primates. They're capable of learning, adapting, even planning. Urban raccoons have been observed working in coordinated groups, posting lookouts while others raid food sources. They've adapted to human schedules, learning when security lights turn off, when dogs are let out, when garbage trucks arrive. But intelligence and dexterity are just tools. What makes raccoons formidable? What most people miss entirely is their willingness to use violence. Raccoons are not passive scavengers. In the wild, they hunt frogs, crayfish, fish, small rodents, bird eggs, young rabbits. They're omnivorous opportunists with a predatory streak. And they have the physical tools to back it up. The teeth are designed for both crushing and tearing. 40 teeth total, including prominent canines that deliver serious bite force. Pound for pound, a raccoon bite is comparable to a coyote's. And unlike many mammals, raccoons are not intimidated by animals larger than themselves. They regularly fight dogs, not flee from them. Fight them. There are documented cases of 20-pound raccoons killing dogs 2 and 3 times their size through sheer aggression and tactical intelligence. The raccoon's strategy when cornered is brutal. It uses those dexterous hands to grab and hold, while the teeth go for vulnerable areas: eyes, nose, throat. And here's where it gets worse. Raccoons are exceptional climbers and swimmers, which means when a fight goes badly, they have escape routes most animals don't. They'll drag opponents into water. A raccoon in water is like a grappler in their element. They'll submerge predators, hold them under. Dogs have drowned this way. The fur is deceptively thick, acting as armor against bites and scratches. The distinctive black mask isn't just camouflage, though it does reduce glare when hunting at night. It's part of a suite of nocturnal adaptations. Eyes designed for low light. Whiskers that detect minute changes in air pressure. Hearing acute enough to locate prey underground. Raccoons are most active between midnight and 4 a.m. They establish home ranges between half a mile and a mile in diameter. Males mark territory aggressively, using scent glands and urine. And here's the critical detail most people miss. Raccoons are not solitary. Female raccoons often live in small groups called gays, sharing dens and sometimes hunting territories. Males are more territorial, but they're not hermits. Young males especially will form bachelor groups. This social structure creates something important: experience. A 5-year-old raccoon has been in fights, lots of them, territorial disputes, mating competition, resource defense. By adulthood, a raccoon has developed a behavioral repertoire that includes intimidation, strategic retreat, and calculated violence. They understand posturing. They understand when to back down. And they understand when to commit fully to a fight. That combination, intelligence, dexterity, aggression, fighting experience, makes the raccoon a far more dangerous opponent than its size suggests. But it has one more advantage that might matter most: pain tolerance. Raccoons have been observed fighting through injuries that would incapacitate other animals. Broken bones, deep lacerations, infections. Their pain threshold is remarkably high, which means in a fight, a raccoon doesn't quit easily. It's an animal that evolution designed to survive, to exploit, to adapt, and when necessary, to fight for what it needs. So that's one side of the equation. Now let's talk about the other. The animal that made fear itself into a survival strategy. The striped skunk, Mephitis, is one of the most recognizable mammals in North America. An adult weighs between 6 and 14 pounds. Body length reaches 20 to 30 inches, including the tail. Males average slightly larger, around 10 to 12 pounds. For context, that's roughly the size of a house cat, substantially smaller than a raccoon, often half the weight. And yet, the skunk occupies space that predators 3 and 4 times its size won't challenge, because size doesn't matter when you're carrying chemical weapons. The spray, or that infamous defense mechanism, comes from 2 glands located on either side of the anus. Each gland holds about 1 tablespoon of a sulfur-based chemical compound, enough for 5 or 6 sprays. The active ingredients, thiols and thioacetates, are among the most pungent compounds in nature. A human can detect skunk spray at concentrations as low as 10 parts per billion. To put that in perspective, if you released a single drop of skunk spray in the volume of 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools, a human nose would still detect it. But the smell isn't the weapon. It's just the warning system that stays long after the actual attack. The spray itself is a liquid jet. Skunks can project it accurately up to 15 feet, and when it hits the eyes, it causes immediate burning pain, temporary blindness, and nausea. The thiols interact with proteins in the cornea, creating a reaction that incapacitates most predators. Great horned owls are one of the only predators that regularly hunt skunks, and they can do it because they have almost no sense of smell. Everything else, wolves, coyotes, mountain lions, bears, learns early not to bother. The evolutionary arms race created behavioral changes in entire predator populations. Coyotes in areas with high skunk density show avoidance behaviors even towards skunk-patterned objects. The black and white stripes became a universal warning sign. But here's what most people don't understand about skunk spray. It's not a panic button, it's a last resort. Skunks know the spray is a finite resource. Those glands take about 2 weeks to fully replenish. So a skunk that depletes its supply is vulnerable for weeks, which means skunks developed an entire escalation protocol before spraying. First, the warning stomp. The front feet rapidly hit the ground. This gives predators a chance to reconsider if the threat continues. The skunk raises its tail, a clear signal visible even in low light. If that doesn't work, the skunk will do a handstand, raising both front paws off the ground. This isn't showmanship, it's communication. I can spray you, leave now. Only if all these warnings fail does the skunk actually spray, and when it does, it's done with remarkable precision. The glands can rotate independently, allowing the skunk to aim accurately without facing the threat. A skunk can literally spray while running away from you. But the spray isn't the skunk's only defense. These animals have teeth. 34 teeth, including sharp canines, bite force disproportionate to their size, and claws built for digging. Skunks excavate burrows, dig for grubs, overturn rocks. Those front claws are 2 inches long, curved and sharp. In close combat, a skunk will bite and claw, and unlike many small mammals, they don't have a strong flight response. The evolutionary strategy that protected them from predators also made them less afraid. Skunks are slow compared to most mammals their size, top speed maybe 10 miles per hour. They can't outrun a raccoon. They can't outclimb a raccoon. What they can do is hold their ground, because for millions of years, holding ground has worked. The diet tells you something important about skunk behavior. Omnivorous like raccoons, but more varied: insects, larvae, small rodents, bird eggs, fruit, garbage. They're not specialists. They're survivors, and they've learned to thrive in human environments just like raccoons have. Suburban skunks den under porches, in crawl spaces, in drainage pipes. They're nocturnal, most active between dusk and dawn, solitary except during mating season, no pack structure, no backup. Every encounter a skunk has, it faces alone, which means every defensive choice matters more. There's no group to retreat to, no coordinated defense, just the individual animal and its deterrence. This created a psychology in skunks that's unusual among prey animals. Confidence. Watch a skunk walk across an open yard and you'll see it. No furtive movements, no constant head checking. They move like animals that don't expect to be bothered, because usually they aren't. That confidence is valuable until it meets something that doesn't care about the warnings, something aggressive enough, hungry enough, or desperate enough to call the bluff. And that's when biology has to answer a difficult question, when the skunk's deterrent fails, when the fight is unavoidable. What happens next? Let's compare these animals category by category, because understanding who wins means understanding where each animal has the advantage. Weight and size. The raccoon dominates here. A 20-pound raccoon versus a 10-pound skunk. That's double the body mass. In animal combat, size matters enormously. The raccoon has more muscle, more mass to throw around, more physical power in every movement. But here's where it gets complicated, because in nature, the bigger animal doesn't always win. Weaponry. The skunk spray is the most powerful deterrent in North American wildlife. Nothing the raccoon has compares. The spray creates space. It buys time. It ends fights before they begin. But only if the skunk has spray left. And only if the skunk gets the angle. And only if the raccoon cares. Because here's the thing about urban raccoons. Many have been sprayed before. They've learned the spray is terrible, but survivable. Juvenile raccoons avoid skunks religiously. Adult raccoons with experience? Less so. Some will press through the spray if hungry enough, if the food source is valuable enough. They've done the cost-benefit analysis, and sometimes food wins. The skunk's claws are formidable for digging, but in combat, less useful than the raccoon's dexterous paws. The raccoon can grab, manipulate, pin. The skunk can swipe, but not grapple. Teeth are comparable. Both have sharp canines. Both can deliver damaging bites. The raccoon's bite force is higher due to size. But a skunk bite to a sensitive area still does damage. Advantage. Skunk if spray is available and effective. Raccoon if spray is depleted or ineffective. Speed and agility. The raccoon is significantly faster. 10 miles per hour versus 15 miles per hour. The raccoon is also more agile, better climber, better swimmer, can change direction rapidly. The skunk's body plan is built for digging and waddling, not for evasion. In an open area, the raccoon closes distance easily. Advantage, raccoon decisively. Fighting. Style. This is where behavioral patterns matter more than physical tools. The raccoon fights like a street brawler, aggressive, willing to escalate, uses grappling techniques, goes for vulnerable area, will fight dirty without hesitation, and critically, the raccoon has fighting experience. Years of territorial disputes, encounters with dogs, other raccoons, possums. It knows how to fight. The skunk fights like someone who never had to learn, because deterrence worked. When spray fails, skunks resort to biting and clawing, but there's no refined technique, no grappling strategy, No experience-based tactical thinking. Just panic defense. And here's the brutal truth. An animal that spent its evolutionary history being avoided hasn't spent that time getting better at physical combat. Advantage, raccoon, heavily. Aggression and psychology. The raccoon is an opportunistic aggressor. It threatens, evaluates, commits. It knows when to fight and when to back off. But when it commits fully. The skunk is confident, but not aggressive. That confidence comes from deterrence. When deterrence fails, that confidence becomes a liability because the skunk doesn't have a backup plan. It has spray, warnings, and if those don't work, it's in a fight it never wanted and isn't prepared for. Advantage, raccoon, pain tolerance and endurance. Both animals have decent pain tolerance, but raccoons regularly fight through injuries, broken toes, torn ears, deep scratches. They keep functioning. Skunks, without predator pressure, haven't been selected for high pain tolerance. They've been selected for effective deterrence. In a sustained fight, the raccoon outlasts. Advantage, raccoon, environmental adaptability. If the fight happens near water, the raccoon dominates. It will drag the skunk in, use its swimming ability as tactical advantage. If the fight happens in confined space, the skunk's spray is more effective, but also more likely to hit itself. In open ground, the raccoon's speed advantage matters more. Near burrows, the skunk has escape routes, but the raccoon can often follow. Advantage, situational, but generally, raccoon. The math, size, raccoon. Weaponry, skunk, conditional. Speed, raccoon. Agility, raccoon. Fighting style, raccoon. Aggression, raccoon. Experience, raccoon. Pain, tolerance, raccoon on paper. This shouldn't even be close. The raccoon has overwhelming advantages in nearly every combat-relevant category, except one. That's spray. And that's the variable that makes this interesting, because evolution gave the skunk a weapon so effective, it never needed to develop anything else. Here's where we need to step back and understand what these animals actually are. The raccoon is an evolutionary opportunist. It adapted to exploit every available resource. That required intelligence, dexterity, aggression, and a willingness to fight for territory, because in the raccoon's world, resources are contested. Other raccoons want the same dumpster. Possums compete for the same den sites. Dogs defend the same yards. The raccoon evolved in an environment of constant competition, which created an animal that fights because fighting is how you survive. Every successful raccoon is successful because it won conflicts, drove off rivals, defended resources. That's selection pressure for combat ability. The skunk evolved in a completely different direction. It developed a weapon so effective that combat became unnecessary. No need to outrun predators when they won't chase you. No need to outfight competitors when they avoid you. No need to develop complex social structures when individual deterrence works. This is elegant evolutionary strategy. Efficiency through deterrence. But it created a trade-off. The skunk never needed to become a better fighter, because being a fighter wasn't the path to survival. Being avoided was. These are fundamentally different evolutionary solutions to the same problem. How to survive in a world full of threats. The raccoon's answer: become dangerous enough to win fights. The skunk's answer: become unpleasant enough to avoid fights. Both strategies work brilliantly until they encounter each other. Because the raccoon strategy is built on the assumption that fighting is inevitable, and the skunk's strategy is built on the assumption that fighting is avoidable. When those assumptions collide, when a raccoon decides the skunk's territory is worth the spray, when a skunk realizes its deterrent isn't deterring, you get a fight between an animal built for combat and an animal built to never need it. The outcome, in most cases, is predictable, but not always. And that's what makes this question more interesting than it first appears, because biology isn't destiny. Individual variation matters, circumstance matters. Luck matters. A particularly small raccoon versus a particularly large skunk. A raccoon with an eye injury versus a skunk with full spray reserves. A fight in deep water versus a fight in a confined burrow. These variables can change outcomes, but they don't change the fundamental reality. One of these animals was built by evolution to win physical confrontations, and the other was built to never need to. This question isn't just theoretical. These encounters happen, and they've been happening long enough that we have actual data. Wildlife rehabilitation centers across North America treat both species regularly, and the patterns are telling. Raccoons come in with skunk spray-related injuries, conjunctivitis from spray in the eyes, temporary blindness, respiratory irritation, but they come in alive. Skunks that tangle with raccoons often don't make it to rehabilitation. The injuries tell a story. Bite wounds to the neck and face. Puncture wounds from those prominent raccoon canines. Crushing injuries consistent with grappling. Veterinarians who specialize in wildlife see this pattern repeatedly. Skunks lose physical confrontations with raccoons unless the spray stops the fight before it starts. Trail camera footage from suburban and rural areas confirms this. When raccoons and skunks meet at food sources, the interaction follows a predictable pattern. The skunk's warning behaviors, the raccoon's evaluation process, and then one of two outcomes. Either the raccoon backs off, decides the resource isn't worth the spray, or the raccoon presses forward, accepts the spray, and the skunk retreats or gets attacked. In one documented case from Colorado, trail cameras captured a raccoon and skunk disputing access to a compost bin. Over the course of 3 nights, the skunk sprayed twice. The raccoon kept returning. By night 4, the skunk had relocated entirely. The raccoon claimed the resource. Urban wildlife studies show this pattern at scale. In neighborhoods where both species are present, resource utilization follows a hierarchy. Raccoons dominate prime locations. Skunks use secondary sites, unless raccoon population density is low. This isn't because skunks prefer inferior resources, it's because raccoons displace them. Even the great deterrent has limits. Native American folklore recognized this dynamic. Stories from multiple tribes feature the skunk as clever but not brave, the raccoon as both clever and dangerous. The distinction is subtle but important. Both animals were respected, but only one was feared. Early naturalists documented encounters as well. Observations from the 1800s describe raccoons raiding skunk dens, killing skunk kids, taking over burrow systems. This isn't aberrant behavior. It's what raccoons do when the cost-benefit analysis favors aggression. Modern studies of urban wildlife confirm what history suggested. In ecological terms, the raccoon is the dominant mesopredator. The skunk occupies space the raccoon permits. That permission is based on the spray deterrent. But deterrence only works when the deterred animal cares and hungry. Territorial raccoons often don't. let's talk about what actually happens when these animals fight. Because we have documentation, trail cam footage, wildlife control reports, citizen observations, and the data is consistent. When skunks and raccoons have physical confrontations, the skunk loses most of the time. In a 2018 study from suburban New Jersey, researchers analyzed 147 interactions between raccoons and skunks at food sources. Captured on motion-activated cameras over 2 years, in 89 cases, the skunk's warning behaviors caused the raccoon to retreat. The spray deterrent worked. In 43 cases, the raccoon pressed through the warnings. Physical contact occurred in 31 of those encounters. Of those 31 physical fights, the skunk successfully defended its position in 4 cases. The raccoon won 27 times. That's an 87% success rate for the raccoon when fights become physical. But here's the critical nuance. In the 4 cases where skunks won, 3 involved juvenile raccoons, inexperienced animals that didn't understand they could push through the spray. The 4th case involved a raccoon that was injured, limping on one leg, likely desperate for food, but physically compromised. When you remove those outliers, adult healthy raccoons won effectively 100% of physical confrontations. Wildlife control officers report similar patterns. In urban areas where both species are common, calls about skunks typically involve spray incidents or denning under structures. Calls about raccoons involve property damage, aggression toward pets, and territorial disputes. The distinction is behavioral. Skunks cause problems through their defensive weapon. Raccoons cause problems through their aggression. One officer in Portland described it this way: "Skunks spray and leave. Raccoons spray back." He meant it literally. Raccoons that have been sprayed multiple times sometimes develop a behavioral response. They'll shake their heads violently, rub their faces in dirt or grass, and then re-engage. The spray is still unpleasant, but it's not incapacitating. And the raccoon has learned that pushing through leads to food. YouTube and social media have hundreds of videos showing these interactions. And the pattern holds. Skunks posture and warn. Raccoons evaluate and often press. When skunks spray, raccoons frequently continue approaching. The skunk almost always retreats. There's one video from Texas that perfectly captures the dynamic. A raccoon and skunk meet at a bird feeder. The skunk does the warning stomp. The raccoon barely pauses. The skunk raises its tail. The raccoon keeps coming. The skunk does a handstand. The raccoon walks around it and starts eating. The skunk never sprays. Because at some level, even the skunk understands. Wasting spray on an animal that won't leave is bad strategy. Better to retreat and find another food source. Veterinary reports from wildlife hospitals provide the grimmest evidence. Skunks admitted with raccoon attack injuries rarely survive. The bite placement indicates raccoons know what they're doing. Neck bites, crushing bites to the spine. These aren't defensive wounds. These are predatory attacks. Some biologists argue that in areas where food is scarce, raccoons will actively hunt skunks, not for territory, for food. A 10-pound skunk is a meal. And while the spray is unpleasant, it's survivable. The evidence from wildlife cameras occasionally captures this. Raccoons eating skunks, not scavenging dead ones, killing them. It's not common behavior, but it happens. And it reveals something important about the raccoon. It's not just an omnivore, it's an opportunistic predator, willing to attack animals it can overpower. The skunk, for all its defensive prowess, can be overpowered. One final piece of evidence comes from rehabilitation facilities. When orphaned raccoon kits and skunk kits are raised together, the facilities separate them by age 3 to 4 months, because as raccoons mature, they become aggressive towards skunks. Even raccoons raised alongside skunks, never developing fear of them, will attack them once they reach adolescence. It's instinctive. The modern evidence is clear. When these animals fight, the raccoon wins, unless the spray stops the fight before it becomes physical, and increasingly in urban environments. The spray doesn't stop it, so who wins, raccoon or skunk? If the skunk's spray works as designed, if the warnings are heeded, if the deterrent does its job, then the skunk wins without fighting. That's the elegant solution evolution gave them. But when deterrence fails, when the fight becomes physical, the raccoon wins almost every time, because evolution gave the raccoon something the skunk never needed: the ability to win fights. These are two different kinds of power. The skunk has the power to avoid conflict. The raccoon has the power to win it. One developed the ultimate deterrent. The other developed the skills to ignore it. And that reveals something profound about evolutionary strategy. Specialization works brilliantly until it meets a generalist that doesn't care. The skunk specialized in deterrence. So effectively, that fighting ability became unnecessary. The raccoon remained a generalist, adaptable, aggressive, opportunistic. And when specialist meets generalist in a fight, the generalist's flexibility usually wins. This pattern appears throughout nature. Animals that develop one dominant defensive strategy often sacrifice other capabilities. It's efficient until the strategy fails, which brings us to another question. Another fight where one animal has mythological status and the other has raw evolutionary power. Lion versus tiger. The king of beasts versus the largest cat. One evolved to fight constantly, defending prides, battling rivals. The other evolved to hunt alone, avoiding fights when possible. Sound familiar? It's the same dynamic we just explored. Different kinds of power, different evolutionary pressures. But when these two apex predators meet, when biology decides the outcome, the answer might surprise you. Lion versus tiger, biology decides who wins